All right, guys, we want you to get good marks, because if you get good marks in grade 11, it gives you the grounding for grade 12, and then you just sail through it all right? And that goes for all your subjects. So we are now going through the muscular, which means you're talking about the muscles, skeletal, they're the muscles that make the skeleton work, okay, system. Now remember, we have cells, or we have organelles. Organelles, Golgi apparatus, the nucleus, the cytoplasm, the mitochondria, all those things, organelles. Organelles make cells. Cells make tissue. Tissue makes organs, all right, like kidneys, heart, okay? Organs together make a system, and the systems together make us the organism. All right, and you learned that in grade 10. I'm reminding you in grade 11. Okay, we are now looking at the muscles, and the muscles that make the skeleton move are voluntary muscles. Okay, why voluntary? Because we work them by will. It is our will to make our muscles work. So all your musculoskeletal muscles are voluntary muscles, and they are made of striated muscle cells. Now I know a lot of you that are watching us have English as a second or a third language, and you're looking at this thinking, whoa, I have no idea what you're talking about. When you sit with a term that you don't understand, or that is a problem, break the word up. So, muscular means muscle. Skeletal, we know, is the skeleton, and we know what a system is. It's a whole bunch of organs put together that work nicely together. Okay? Our muscles in our skeleton work voluntarily. If I want to take this pen and I want to put it into this hand, I know I move this across. I am voluntarily moving my muscles. Unlike your smooth muscle, which makes up your organs, they work without you even thinking about it. You do not control it with your will. All right? Your cardiac muscles in your heart, you can't control with your will either. But moving your legs, doing all those things, doing this, smiling, you are voluntarily moving your muscles. Looking grouchy, angry, whatever, you are thinking about it. So you're moving it consciously. And all your muscles move antagonistically, but we're going to get to that. What I want to do, though, is I want to just check that you remember the joints, because the joints are very, very, very important. We had our fibrous joints. There is no movement. Why? Because, and we want a different color here. Why? Because it's like, for example, the sutures of the skull. Those are the joints that hold their skull bones together. I mean, can you imagine if this is moving around? Oh my gosh, what will happen to the brain? And nothing can happen to the brain, because the brain is what makes your body work. Okay, then, so fibrous joints, there is no movement. And you must know this, please. Then we have our cartilaginous joints. Those are the ones that are made of cartilage, like the discs between the vertebra of the spine, and also the cartilage between the pubic bones. The bones here, the pubic symphysis, that bone, where the two bones meet. All right, because it's got to be able to move, it's got to have some movability. And here we've got slight restricted movement. Otherwise, you will not be able to bend over. One of you last week, and Indy told me this after we'd sort of finished off and it was over. It was why when we when somebody clicks your back or you click your knuckles, what that noise is. You must remember, and that takes us to our synovial joints. So let's just get through this and I'll show you what the synovial joint looks like and I'll explain exactly to you where that click comes from. Okay, we have our synovial joints and we've got the ball and socket joint, all right? And that ball and socket joint, remember, is at our hips, all right, and at our shoulders. Gliding joint, it's a flat bone with another surface, and that's in your wrist and your ankles. And then we looked at the hinge joint. Now remember, your hinge joint is like the door. It's like the hinge of a door. It can only go in one direction, all right? Gliding was this way. So that's gliding. And then hinge and your knee, all right? And then your pivot joint, which is the one I love. Pivot means it pivots around, all right? And we are able to do that, so it's pivoting around a central point, okay? Pivot, it pivots around. So those were our four: ball and socket, gliding, hinge, and pivot. Learn them. Sit down, write this table here out, stick it on the fridge, and you don't even think of opening that fridge until you've read through the joints. And I promise you now, 2 days, especially if you like food, all right? But even if you're getting cold water out of the fridge or milk out of the fridge for a cup of tea or whatever, if you do it for 2 to 3 days, do it for a week if you have to. Promise you now you'll know all your joints, and you will get a question on the joints in an exam. In fact, it's quite probable that they give you a long question or an essay on joints. It's a nice one. Alrighty, now, here we've got the ball and socket joint. It tells you here it's in the hip, all right? And what have we got? The biggest issue here is that we've got the head of the femur. Now, how do we remember that this is the femur? Because girls in bikinis have beautifully long legs. Why? Because they have long femurs, and femurs are feminine. Right, so femur, and we've got the ball and the socket in the hip, and the ball fits into there. All right, what are we going to have? We're going to have the cartilage, or the articular cartilage around, and there's the hole in the bone, in the hip bone, and what holds it together is ligaments. People, you've got to remember, ligaments hold bone to bone so that our bones don't dangle like a puppet, all right? Ligaments hold bone to bone, and tendons attach bones to muscle or muscle to bone, all right? So the way a tendon works, okay, is part of it encapsulates the bone, and then it goes and it covers the whole muscle. So that's what you've got. It's almost continuous from the bone onto the muscle. So that's why your tendons are strong. And if your tendons don't work, or you've torn a tendon, A, it's very painful, B, it restricts movement incredibly, especially if it's your Achilles tendon, for example, or the tendons behind your knees here. You will not be able to move because the muscles will not be able to pull the bone up. And remember, your bones, it's like our skeleton that we had here, okay? What was our skeleton's name? I've actually forgotten. Dudu. We had Dudu here. Now, I mean, you take that skeleton, you lift its arm, it just flops down. But for us, we've got muscles, and those muscles lift. Muscles are attached to these bones, to that skeleton. It's attached by means of tendons. All right, the ligaments hold the bones to the bones. And that's what very often gets hurt when girls, you're walking around in those very, very high shoes, those platform shoes. And you see, you can do that because when you're short, you can wear those things that are this high. Except that when you fall, you go bloops, and you end up tearing your ligaments, the structures that hold the bone to the bone. All right? Then here's an example of a hinge joint. That would be the knee joint. Now, here's your femur. There's the knee. And here you have your tibia in line with the big toe, and the fibula, which is at the back. And what have we got here? We've got the cartilage at the bottom here, and this is the proximal end. And the bones sit and they fit onto each other, but you've got this cartilage, and you're going to have a whole bunch of fluid in between. Now, if we look at human locomotion means to be able to move. And it doesn't necessarily have to be human, it is any animal. It's anything that is not a plant. All right? So if you don't have cell walls in your cells, you are an animal. And any animal cell has to move. Now with us, especially the vertebrates sitting on land, what do? We are able to move. We must move. And that's why we call it, now we're speaking about humans specifically, human locomotion. Locomotion, to move from point A to move to point B. Why do we need to do that? Well, apart from the fact that we work and all that, but I mean, if we were out in the middle of nowhere, we would have to find food, we would have to find shade, we'd have to find shelter and water and space and all that kind of thing. We need to move. Bones help us to move. All right, so we've got the bones. That gives us our skeleton. We have the joints. If we didn't have the joints, then the bones would all be dislocated. We must have the bones joined to each other so that it moves as a coordinated whole. Now, you know, some people have got good coordination, others have got a lousy coordination. And we normally say people with really good ball skills, okay, have good coordination. But then think of an athlete. A person who's a supreme athlete who can jump high and jump far and do triple jump, that takes a lot of coordination. All right, so our joints need to be movable and immovable. So we've got, remember the fibrous joints, I'm putting an F, okay, and they were immovable. We had our cartilaginous joints with a little bit of movement, and then we have our synovial joints. And please make sure that you learn the diagram. Now, ligaments, what do ligaments do? Okay, ligaments hold bone to bone. Okay, tendons hold or attach muscle to bone. All right, so tendons, think of your Achilles tendon. Come on, girls, especially the girls with their high shoes, all right? And if you want your Achilles tendon has to work really nicely to make your calves look sexy, Achilles tendon. So a tendon holds muscle to bone, and ligaments hold bone to bone. All right, we've got like 30 seconds left, and now we're going to go on to antagonistic. And just before we take our ad break, I want to explain to you antagonistic. What is it to be antagonistic? It means to be on opposite sides. All right, you get two fighters in a ring, they're antagonistic. They want to fight each other. They are opposite. And it's because of the antagonistic movement, the opposite movement of muscles, that we are able to move our skeletons. So antagonistic, which is where I left off, said you've got two fighters in a ring, they're antagonistic, they want to go at each other. So you've got two chickens, they're going to go at each other. Antagonistic, you don't feel very good, or you feel opposite to the other person. All right, so our muscles work. Please look at the word. So we're going to go, let me just get a color here. Let's go yellow. We go stick. All right? Make sure you can spell it. Antagonistic. And what does it mean? It means opposite. All right, now look at my finger. If I do put my finger down and I curl it down, okay, what's happening? These muscles have to stretch or flex. And these muscles, extend, and these muscles flex. They curl up, they contract. Now, think about guys when they say flex your muscles. Okay, now I don't actually have a hell of a lot of muscle to flex here, but you know when guys go or you know when they're doing like bodybuilding competitions, they flex their muscle. That means they contract it. So the flexor will be the muscle that's contracting. Okay? Let's have a look. Here we've got our biceps, which is this one, and the triceps, which is at the back. Okay? When I want to bring my hand to my face, all right, whatever, to my face, I'm bringing it here. This muscle here, this biceps, has to contract. But if the biceps is contracting and the triceps is not relaxing or extending, there's no way you're going to get your hand back here. So what we have to do is this muscle, the biceps, has to contract or flex, so it becomes the flexor. And your extensor, or the muscle that extends and stretches, is the back muscle, so the triceps. But now, if I want to take my hand down, what's going to happen? The biceps has to relax, so it relaxes, and the triceps is what's pulling my arm straight. So your muscles always work opposite. And what I'd like you all to do, I know you're sitting and you're busy typing, I need for you to multitask. I want you to stand up, and I want you to lean on something, take your leg, whichever leg you feel more stable on, and I want you to take your leg at right angles, all right? Now, straighten your leg, all right? And I'm battling here because my gym instructor killed me this morning, Michelle, but we won't go there. All right, so you straighten. What am I doing? My hamstrings, at least my quads, are pulling, they're contracting to lift the foot up, all right? And if I now want to bend, these muscles here have to extend. They have to relax. And what's happening here? The hamstrings are saying, come, pull back. So quads, hamstrings, quads, hamstrings. People, if you're sitting in an exam and you've got to explain antagonistic movement, take your finger, if you're right-handed, take your left finger and sit there and go, okay, so these are flexing, these are extending. Why? It's antagonistic movement. Now, can you imagine if both muscles extended, the finger goes nowhere. If both muscles contract, that finger's going to go nowhere. One has to give and the other one has to contract. And then this one contracts, this one has to release. It's like the perfect relationship if you have it so. The one contracts, the other one relaxes, and then you swap. So biceps, the front, triceps is the back, moving the hand up. This muscle here is going to be contracting, or we say it is the flexor. It flexes. The muscle at the back, or the triceps, okay, this muscle is going to be relaxing. And when it relaxes, it is going to extend. So it becomes the extensor. It extends. And how do we exercise? By contracting and relaxing, and contracting and relaxing. And that is what's going to make us work our muscle. Now, when muscles contract, this is another story. And this you have to know. Okay, what John's done here is he's given more antagonistic. We've got our biceps and our triceps. So flexor or flexation, you're pulling up, and extension, you are relaxing. It's the opposite direction of what I've just explained to you. Okay, how does it all work? We look at our little muscle. This is one muscle. All right, so let's say, for example, this is the biceps. I'm sorry, I don't have a big one. and I'm looking at...
I can't help either, Kathy. The germs
I'm
that
looking
way.
at Indiana.
The germs that way.
Yeah, we're soft, you see. So, but you'll have to just bear with us. Okay, so what have we got? We've got this muscle here. Now, if I take this muscle out, it's got this sort of shape. All right? So, and what is it made of? It's made of striated muscle. All right? And why do we call it striated? Because it's got striations. Now, the best way to think of striations is, you know the Scottish, and the Scottish people have got those kilts, all right? And the kilts are all made of tartan material, and they are striated. So striated means different lines running across and running this way and that way. That's striated. So we've got striations, which are these different little layers that we have within a muscle fiber, and that's called your muscle fiber here. And the muscle fiber is made up of lots of myofibrils. So we've got the muscle, and the muscle is made up of muscle. All right, we've got the muscle. The muscle's made up of muscle fibers. So this whole thing here would be a muscle fiber. Okay, let's just do this. That is my muscle fiber. Muscle. This is English. English is difficult, hey? It's got more exceptions than the rules, blah, blah, blah. But remember, if you have to say muscle, then you say muscle. I'd rather you mispronounce the words. And I mean, if you guys have been following what I did last year with the grade 12s as well, and they will tell you the last year's grade 12s, I kept saying, if you know how, make sure you know how to spell the word. If you mispronounce it, who cares? Because you're not doing an oral exam at the end of the year, you're doing a written exam. Make sure you can spell it so you don't look like an idiot. Okay, so here we go. Your muscle, okay, and it's a what? It's a muscle fiber. It's actually a fibre. So you've got your muscle fiber, and the muscle fiber, that whole little structure is made up of myofibrils. Now people, look at this. The word M or the prefix MYO actually is Latin for muscle. All right, so if we say it is a myofibril, we're actually saying it is a little bitty piece of a muscle fiber. It's the baby of the muscle fiber. So your myofibrils make up a muscle fiber, and a whole bunch of muscle fibers are going to make up the big muscle. All right, now, how does it all work? You see these little colored parts here? There's dark and there's light, and there are little bridges here. Okay, those lines are those lines over there. Now, you don't need to know absolute amazing detail. You're not studying medicine, by the way. You are doing grade 11 life sciences. But we want you to know how it works. What causes a muscle to move? In this little myofibril, we have myosin and actin fibers. Now you must know, these are very, very little. They're tiny. And that's what makes up these different colors. So your darker ones are the myosin, the lighter ones are the actin, and they sit like this. Now if you look at my hand, this is exactly how they sit. They sit sort of in each other's gaps. And when the muscle contracts, your myosin and your actin pull together, and they almost form like little bridges. So they interlace like your hands. Now think about how strong your hands are when you interlace them. I mean, you can give someone a hand up a wall like this. So you interlace the myosin and the actin, which makes up one myofibril, one tiny little muscle fiber. okay, or myofibrils make up the muscle fibers which make up the muscle. So it interlinks like that and it forms a bridge. And as it interlinks like that, that's when your muscle contracts. So you'll have the muscle contracting here as they interlink across like that. Right, that causes a muscle contraction. For that to happen, this little thing needs, let's take this up a little bit. It needs calcium ions. Okay, and it needs, now remember, to contract takes energy. So we need adenosine triphosphate. And I hope you grade 11s remember what ATP is. It's adenosine, which is a protein, okay, and 3 phosphates. And your energy is trapped in the bond between the phosphate and the adenosine. So when it has full energy capacity, it's adenosine triphosphate, ATP. And when you need the energy, 1 phosphate is released, and the energy in that bond is then given off, and that's what the muscle will use. And that is why, for those of you that want to lose weight, okay, this is why if you're a little weighty, or a little chubby, or you have a little excess weight, what do? We go to gym and we work out. Or you go for a long walk around the block every day. Or you sit and you do sit-ups and push-ups and press-ups and what at home. You don't have to go to a gym to train, but you can. So you train, and what are you doing? You are using ATP for your muscles every time the myosin and the actin contract and form bridges. So every time a muscle contracts, you need energy. Now, where's the energy come from? You're going to get it from the mitochondria, which are in the muscle cells, all right? The striated muscle cells. Mitochondria are now going to take glucose, and they're going to use oxygen, all right? And they are going to produce ATP and water and CO2. That's what cellular respiration is. So when we run out of glucose, the muscle cells say, whoa, hold on, not enough glucose here. Where are those fat cells? I know we've got fat cells stored here, and the muscle, the fat that's in between your muscles, that's what your muscle cells start breaking down. And that's why exercise is what makes us slim and trim. Right, it's because you need that ATP every time the myosin and the actin in the myofibril, which means the little baby muscle fiber, when that pulls together to make a bridge, right, and to cause the muscle to contract, that's what we end up with. And something else, just as an extra snippet, you know when people have an epileptic fit, they have a grand mal seizure, which is a complete seizure, their muscles are twitching. Why? They're sitting with too much energy in their brain and in their body. So with the muscles contracting, it releases that energy, and that's why they will sleep for up to 10, 12 hours after a seizure, because they've now used all that energy, and the energy now has to be remade while the little mitochondria do their thing.